Welcome everyone, and I am going to be sharing a screen with you as a part of our presentation so that it's easy to follow. Everything's new, so here we are. Can you see the screen? Anya, can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. Sai Vigneshi, can you please mute yourself?
Yes.
Everybody keep it muted so that it's clear for everyone. It will take a day or so if you're not used to it.
पूछ रहे
Megha, also mute yourself.
फोटो नहीं दिखाई दे
अरे आपकी वीडियो में दिखाई दे रही है, क्यों ऐसे हरकतें कर रही है, हाथ मत दिखा रही है, सीधा देखते रहे स्क्रीन में.
Please mute yourselves. Everybody can hear you. Everybody can hear from behind, and it's going on Facebook also. So please mute yourself. नमस्ते बालाजी, आप भी म्यूट कर लीजिए. ऑडियो को म्यूट कर लीजिए. Okay. So today is a Guru Purnima day, and we take this auspicious day to start our text on Tattvabodha, a very fundamental text it is otherwise, but very, very essential, clearing the basics with reference to Vedanta. I'm repeating myself. Everybody, please mute your audios. We can't proceed with the class. साईं विघ्नेश जी, आपका ऑडियो अभी भी चल रहा है. आप ऑफ कर
ऑडियो अभी चल रहा है, ऑडियो म्यूट करना है.
So to start this, before going any further, we'll do the invocation as is always the procedure for any study that we have to undertake, a study which is of a different kind of a nature. The purpose of invocation is twofold. One, a very important thing and a very practical thing is that while our minds are engaged in worldly activities throughout the day, we are busy acting, we are busy relating, we are busy in our minds are busy. When we start any study, forget this study, when we start any study, we need to switch off our mind from its preoccupations. The mind needs to be tuned to whatever you are doing. Now, you're going to undertake. The focus has to be generated. To generate that focus, the psychology that it uses is, invocations uses, the psychology of association. Association means the minute with practice, when you chant the invocation, your mind indirectly perceives the message that now you have to leave all the other preoccupations temporarily aside, and you need to keep your mind absolutely fresh and engaged in what is to be now undertaken, because the subject that we are undertaking is a very subtle subject. It is not comprehensible as an object. When we say, let's do pottery, it is an artistic field, and the one we learn from will tell us materials and things, and we can perceive them. It is easier to focus because our senses can remain engaged. But when a subject pertains to something where our senses are not going to be easily engaged except for our ear and our mind, so invocation tells the person that I am now switching myself off from preoccupations, I'm going to begin the process of focusing on what I have chosen for myself to undertake. The second very, very essential purpose of this is that it is in the form of a prayer. A prayer, rare is it anywhere in any culture, in any society, that you will have a prayer at the beginning of a study where the teacher and the student are both praying. They are both praying together to a common cause. Common cause being Ishvara, God, the unknown factor which everyone recognizes. There's a higher controlling power. You call it Ishvara, you call it God, you call it whatever name. Names are not essential, but that recognition that there is something beyond just my individual nature and my individual capacities, which seems to be more powerful. नमस्ते बालाजी, आपको आई रिक्वेस्ट प्लीज म्यूट कर लीजिए अपने ऑडियो को. अभी सिर्फ सुनना है, जब बोलेंगे तब ऑन करेंगे. एवरीबॉडी, थैंक यू. भानु जी, आपका भी अभी भी ऑन है.
हाँ जी,
आपका ऑडियो ऑन है.
ऑडियो अभी आवाज नहीं आ रही है.
नहीं, हमको तो आ रही है. आपकी आवाज बहुत अच्छे से आ रही है, इसलिए थोड़ी वो हो रही है.
आपका बहुत कम आ रही है और यहाँ पे तो फुल में है मेरा.
हम तो नहीं, आई थिंक आपको हेडफोन लगाना पड़ेगा. बाकी सबको आवाज अच्छे से आ रही है. हमारे कभी ऑडियो का कनेक्शन होता है इसके अंदर, वो आप चेक कर लीजिए. अभी आपने वीडियो ऑफ किया है, आप ऑडियो ऑफ करेंगे तो आपको सुनाई देगा. ऑडियो ऑफ करने का मतलब है आपकी आवाज हम तक नहीं आएगी. So as I was saying, invocation is something, a prayer, which is of the nature where teacher and the student both do together, invoking that higher power, higher beings, God, you call it whatever name. The fact that we see something, we perceive something above us, that seeking something above us, this prayer is done to say that may we have an enjoyable interaction. The teacher says, may I be inspired to give my best. We will go into the meaning word by word very soon. This is a gist. And the student also says, may I be inspired to learn without any prejudices, biases, and the interaction should be enjoyable and full of growth for both of us. And then Shanti is invoking the peace at all levels. The details later. In the invocation, you see these matras. There is one matra below sa. There is one matra above na. This now should also have been above, couldn't do it. These matras are specific to invocations. When there is no matra like on her, the sound is at a neutral level, normal level. It's her. If it is below, it is sa. If it is higher, it is na. At the same level, it is called udata. At the lower level, it is called anudata. And at a higher level, it is called swarita. At this point, don't worry, very soon you'll get it. I will just chant the invocation from my side. You can just follow it on your own as much, and then we will learn it in time. Today is just an orientation. We will focus on that. Sahana vavatu, sahanau bhavatu, saha viryam karavavahai, tejasvinavadhitamastu avahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. meaning we'll see later. Now, what is the purpose of this orientation? Let's come to the topic straight. The purpose of this orientation is twofold. One is to understand where does Tattva Bodha, which is a Vedantic text, stand in this huge ocean of all Indian texts. Indian literature is vast, especially the scriptural literature, the spiritual literature. It is so vast that when we pick up a thread, we have to see where it traces itself back, though the origin is the same, but the vastness of it sometimes is like different branches of a big tree, huge banyan tree, and those branches the flower at one end cannot see the flower at the other end, though they are both connected to the same root. So one purpose is to see where does the Vedantic text stand in this vast Indian scriptural texts. With this, you will get an idea of what you are connecting to. The second purpose, of course, is a smaller one, which is just a minor modus operandi. To start with the first one, where does Tattva Bodha place itself in the entire Indian scriptural texts? It is the root itself being Ved. We all know Ved are four: Rig Ved, Yajurved, Samved, Atharved. Ved itself, etymologically, word itself means knowledge. The first tracker over here is Ved itself means knowledge. Uncode this. Ved comes from the root Sanskrit Vid, and Vid ka arth hai jnane, to know. So whenever the sense of knowing is involved, this root Vid gets used, and Veda word comes from Vid. If it is to do with knowledge, what kind of knowledge? Ekam tat vipra bahuda vadanti. This is a Rig Ved quote. There are few letters before and after. Ekam sat. The knowledge is about one, that one is sat. Sat translated generally is existence. The existence itself is one. Knowledge about that. Vipra means those who know, wise people. The wise call that one knowledge of existence, one existence knowledge, Bahuda. They call it, speak of it as many. That one existence is spoken of as many. That one existence, one truth, is called Brahman. This Brahman, expressed as many, means as many devatas, gods. Bhanuji, I would request you to please ऑडियो मतलब म्यूट कर दीजिए उसको, वहां पे एक साइन होता है, उसको आप म्यूट, हाँ अब आपने किया, वेरी गुड, ग्रेट, थैंक यू. So that one Brahman, the truth, which is the subject matter of Ved, जानने वाला, ज्ञान ही उसके ऊपर है. पूरा वेद जो अब 4 में हम देख रहे हैं, the entire Ved has only one topic, which is about the one, and that one is the truth, and that truth is Brahman. And that Brahman is expressed as many gods, many, multifold ways. Examples: Agni, Vayu, Indra, Surya, Varuna. You know, all these are parts of our prayers to elements. If you see them all, they are elements. That means all the gods that are referred to in the Veda is actually one Brahman manifested as these elements. And it is that Brahman in the elements is what you pray when you pray. What further is the definition of Ved? Very beautifully, it differentiates from all other methods of knowledge. Ved is on one side and all other methods are on the other side. If I take a pause and you ask you a question which you reflect upon, last 2 centuries plus, 2.5 centuries approximately, since the Industrial Revolution started in humanity, what is the predominant thinking force that has driven man's pursuits, human beings' direction, pursuit, thinking, lifestyles, habits? Everything has been driven by which fundamental thinking? And we will realize that the Industrial Revolution has made it easier to come to the scientific revolution. And if you watch today, you see how science has percolated in everyday aspects of our life. It is actually the scientific thinking which has percolated into an average person's life also. There is nothing we can do today without help of a science. Science means it's not a textbook. It is a way of thinking. It is actually the processing of your information. Scientific method is processing of the information that your senses gather and coming to conclusions and applying them back in the world. This scientific temperament has been the ruling force for last 2.5, 3 centuries approximately. It is moving towards it. What you have to pick up here is, as science has percolated into our life without our recognition, today we can't do without it. We are talking unknown. You are unknown to me, I am unknown to you, and we are connected together thanks to science. We are talking on a subject which is otherwise something that rishis have renounced their life for. They have gone to taken on hardships and difficulties, exposed themselves to extremes of weather and food habits. Everything changed. Gone to Himalayas, done austerity for this knowledge, and today we are sharing this knowledge with each other based on some scientific advancement. How much has it percolated? What is Veda is also knowledge. If you can see the parallel, just as science is something that depends upon information, and the information depends upon your senses. Pratyaksha is that which is your 5 senses. All this will come in Tattva Bodha later. Pratyaksha is the 5 senses. Sense organs: eyes, ears, nose, touch, and your smell, your tongue, taste. This Pratyaksha means sense perception, and based on it the inferences, logical inferences, Anuman. Inferences, you have a symptom like of, say, a cold, and you have an inference that it can be this or this or this or this. It's all inferential. That inferential and sensory perceptional based knowledge is science. What the definition of Veda is, that knowledge which is Pratyaksha Anumitya, Pratyakshena Anumitya is to be taken as Pratyaksha Anumitya or Yahatu Upayaha Na Buddhyate. A knowledge which cannot be gained through Pratyaksha or Anuman, which means all my senses become defunct. There is a knowledge where they will not really give value to the base, they will not add value. Enam vindati vedena tasmat vedasya vedata. Vedas reveal that knowledge which your senses fail to reveal to you. जो ज्ञान वेदों के द्वारा होता है वो प्रत्यक्ष अथवा अनुमान प्रमाण से प्राप्त नहीं होता. And that ज्ञान, जो विषय है उसका, that is तत्व, the essence, the one true truth, Brahman, that is called tattva. Another very beautiful definition that is given, this Acharya is Sayanacharya, somewhere in the 13th or the 14th century, he has given these definitions. The second definition is Ishta Prapti, Anishta Pariharayoho, Alaukikam Upayam. Ishta Prapti means जो मुझे बहुत जोरों से चाहिए, something that I really want and I desire. Like for example, if I desire comfort in heat, I have worked, man has worked enough to find himself fans and ACs. Means my desired object I gain knowledge of, and then I have that, I produce that. Ishta means बहुत इच्छा है जिसकी. प्राप्ति जो चाहिए. Second knowledge means I must have a knowledge of what I want. Anishta pariharaha, I must also have the knowledge of what I want to avoid, I don't want. Nobody wants discomfort, nobody wants unhappiness, nobody wants conflicts, nobody wants dukkham, nobody wants difficulties, struggles. Therefore, I must know a way, I must have a knowledge which is going to avoid these things. That knowledge should be alaukikam upayam, means it should not be in the realms of pratyaksha and anumana. Pratyaksha anumana based knowledge is called laukika knowledge. Laukika matlab lok se nirbhar. Lok pe nirbhar. Lok is what? Bhulok. Bhulok is earth. Means where you are living, your sensory life, wherever you live, that is pratyaksha anumana based laukika gyan. In other words, if I mix this and I get that, that is laukik gyan. If I study the science branch, then I get into scientific field, laukik branch. These are laukika gyan. They will give me what I want and help me avoid what I don't want to some extent. But when the means have to be alaukikam, means it should not be based on these two. That alaukikam upayam, the knowledge which gives that alaukik upaya, yaha granthaha vedayati saha vedaha. The granth which tells that is called Ved, is a Ved. So I hope these two definitions are clear. First definition I'm summarizing. A knowledge which cannot be gained through sensory means and inferences. Where that knowledge is revealed is called Ved. Second definition of Ved is the laukika means of sensory perception and inferences, etc., regular knowledge of the world, not using that, but another means which is alaukik, means they use another praman. That word is a technical word called praman. In time you will figure this word out and it has a lot of depth in it. Praman means validity. I'll just talk about it. Alaukika upayam must also be valid. It cannot be someone's imagination. It cannot be mythology. It cannot be unknown to unknown. The means which will give me what I want, Ishta Prapti, is something known to me. Anishta Parihara is known to me. So whatever means I may employ as alaukik must have this end. It must give me what I want and help me to avoid what I don't want. Alaukikam upayam. That which gives me this is called Ved. These two being the definitions, you see some characteristics which are very particular to Ved. Vedas is apaurushaya. Must have heard many times. All science, if you equate it to Veda, is a body of knowledge. You cannot authorize science. You cannot authorize Veda. It is authorless. Apaurushaya means it is not based on one person's intellect. It is not based out of human intellect. Science is based in human intellect but not based on one person. Apaurushaya means not based on human intellect and not based on any person. It is a temperament which builds. Second characteristic is it's anadi. It is beginningless. Ved is so vast that it is considered beginningless, means it seems to have no beginning. It is revelation. Just as, where would you say science has a beginning? Only in thinking. If you think you are scientific, you are scientific. Means if you have the methodology of a scientific processing, you are a scientific person. Anadi, beginningless, means that you cannot trace it to origin in time. It is beginningless. It is authorless. It is beginningless. It is anant. It is so vast that it is limitless. Its scope is limitless. It is limitless. It has no end. Means you begin the process of learning and you realize that where it leads to itself, that end is not there in the sense that it is a limitless. You gain the knowledge, but there seems to be always more, just as in science. But I'm not equating science and Veda. Please take care of that. I'm showing the difference. The commonality is only in recognizing the temperament. And then everything changes after that. The fourth characteristic is Sanatana. It is timeless. Timeless means it is not bound in time. It will not decay in time. It will not change in time. A knowledge which is eternal. And eternal means it will remain ever there. For example, I would say as long as the earth is there, even before it was discovered, the gravity was discovered, gravity was still there. Even now, there are many things we don't understand. They are still there. They are getting unfolded to us. They're getting revealed to us. Science is helping us reveal matter. What does Veda help us reveal? Call it the opposite of matter. Consciousness, awareness, the life principle which runs through the matter. That life principle that you experience yourself as alive. That life principle that you very well know is expressing in this body in a very short time. When you see someone and the last moments, and you see them just gone, as we say in our culture, यात्रा उसने दूसरी ले ली, शरीर यात्रा उसकी यहाँ खत्म होके, he's moved on. When you say moved on, what do you mean moved on? What has moved on? If you are the body, if you are this person, if you are here, you feel so strong about yourself, you know there is birth, you know there is death, then what has moved on? What is that idea of moving on? Where did he go? Where did this happen? Sanatana means something that remains ever, always there. Whether you recognize it or you don't recognize it, whether it becomes useful to you or it remains unknown to you, its presence is always there. That means it is up to us to delve into it. It's like saying the Ganges is always flowing. If I don't take a pipe out of it, I don't draw water out of it. If I don't connect to it, I don't get water from it. The Ganges is flowing. For me to get water from Ganges, I approach the Ganges. In the same way, this knowledge is eternal. It is always there. But that doesn't mean everybody approaches it. It doesn't mean that it is available to everybody. To make it available to oneself, one approaches it. And when one approaches it, there is a method to it. So these are the 4 characteristics which define as if the Veda. And then you have a very essential part which you will be hearing many times. And it is important at this stage in orientation to get familiar with these terms, because based on this, any further Vedantic study, you will hear these words very often. Ved, each Ved is divided into 4 parts, 4 sections. There is a Samhita section, there is a Brahmana section, there is an Aranyaka section, and there is an Upanishad section. Samhita section is predominantly the Suktas. What are the Suktas? Suktas are actually hymns that praise the elemental deities, gods. Surya Puja, Surya Mantra, Vayu Mantra, Agni Mantra, glorifying these elemental gods. Those mantra by itself means that the sound is alaukik. For example, if I say Vishnu, Bhagwan Vishnu, if I say, Vishnu word is not applicable to any object. Vishnu word itself has a meaning. It is applicable to Bhagwan Vishnu. Yes, we keep that name as a noun for ourselves, different. But the object that word reveals is alaukik. If I say pot, pot word is a laukik word. It denotes an object which is laukik, pot. So suktas mantras are those sounds which have alaukikta in them. Means they pertain to alaukik vishaya. And a combination of these mantras is called sukta. Very often you would have heard, it's very popular, Purusha Sukta, Devi Sukta, Shri Sukta. These are all suktas. They are very powerful combination of mantras where each mantra is a powerful alaukika sound, referring to an alaukika vishaya, object. Second part is the Brahmana part. Brahmana part, while all of Samhita is in the form of suktas, means poetry. Brahmana part is actually descriptions. It's prose. It explains away in details, great details, all the methods of doing physical forms of worship, yajna, details of yajnas. The Brahmana part will elaborate the technicalities of worship. And remember, worship will be for what? Go back to the definition. Ishta prapti, anishta pariharayoho, alaukika upaya. So whoever is doing Samhita, Brahmana, they have some ishtam in them, for which they have engaged in these actions, which are alaukika. So Sukta will be a poetry, singing hymns. Brahmana will be doing the rituals, performance. The third stage will be Aranyaka. Aranyaka literally means forest. Forest indicates actually the stage where rituals physically have fallen off. You don't need to do physical rituals, but you do the rituals, the techniques of doing them mentally. So invoking how the god, singing which praise, doing all of those as mental worships is called upasana, generally translated as meditations. Meditation on specific deities or gods. All these three are one term called Karmakand. Samhita, Brahmana, Aranyaka is called Karmakand. The fourth is the Upanishad. Upanishad is entirely Gyan based, knowledge. What knowledge? Atma, Brahma, Aikya, Gyan, Vidya. Which Vidya? This life principle expressing in this body is the same life principle expressing in all bodies, in all life forms, and is not just restricted to this. Gaining that perception, gaining that knowledge. This Atma Brahma Vidya is actually the topic of Upanishad. All Upanishads only deal with this. Upanishad itself is called Vedanta. The knowledge of Atma Brahma Aikyam, in other words, is Vedanta. वेदांत का विषय क्या है, टॉपिक क्या है? जस्ट एज फिजिक्स का टॉपिक क्या है, मैटर, वेदांत का टॉपिक क्या है, उपनिषद का टॉपिक क्या है, आत्मा ब्रह्म विद्या. And this portion of the Veda is called Jnana Kand. Kand means section. So fundamentally, you have these 4 sections, but they are not segregated as sections. How in modern books we have the titles, and then we have chapters, and then we have subtitles. Vedas are not like that, because they were all revelations. It's like science in its very original state. Before science has become branched into, say, physics, chemistry, and physics gets further branched into, say, nuclear physics and atomic physics, biological physics, kinetics, kinesiology when it gets mixed with biology. These are all branches that have come out from the same science. In the same way, the same Veda has these branches, but you cannot say they are like chapters like this. And what is important as Vedanta students for us who are just starting in our studies, supposing, is that Upanishad, though everybody says it's Veda ka Ant, Veda Ant is Vedanta. Veda Ant word is made up of Veda Anta, Vedanta. It is not really literally the end of Veda in the sense of its placement. Vedant literally means the topic is the last topic that Veda will deal about. Why? Because now it is purely talking about the life principle. That I am alive का जो notion है ना, ये I am alive का notion को examine करना. What is the sense of life principle? Having knowledge of it. Now these 4 incidentally are very beautifully, Vedas has, just as I said, science has percolated into our lifestyles. Vedic thinking is also percolated into science, into our life patterns when it was followed. Which means what? Samhita part was all suktas which were given to brahmacharis, means in your childhood stage. When you have not much preoccupation in the mind, not responsibilities. They were all to be memorized. The entire childhood was largely dependent upon memorization. There were many advantages of this. The Vishaya being something alaukik, when a child has the power to memorize something which his eyes don't see, his hands don't touch. It's not like twinkle, twinkle, little stars. I can see the stars and I can remember twinkle, twinkle. But if I'm given the suktas to remember, Purusha Sukta, etc., at a very young age, I don't know what this, I have to visualize a form. I have to visualize the Purusha himself before I can start in. All that process was a mental development also of a child, human child. It was a process of development of the inner personality of the person. This child, when he grew to becoming a age where he would take on marriage, grahast, it's called, householder. The brahmachari becomes a householder. He has responsibilities. He has a family. He has to take care of the society. He has a lot of duties to perform. He's the most engaged stage of life. This memorization now, they learned all that. Now they start applying that in this stage of life, in the grahast stage of life. So the pros was how to do all these. Now, so with the help of this little knowledge here and there, they would be able to do their daily duties, etc. And at the same time, not get so involved in it that their personal development would stop. So the technique of doing the duties, performing actions, remaining in the midst of life, and yet not getting overwhelmed by the pressures of life. That technique is through rituals, alaukik method, Brahmana portion. By this stage, you say 20 years, 40 years. Samhita portion, Brahmachari, 20 years, another 20 years, Brahmana portion. Averagely, or 25. Then comes the next third stage of our life, which in today's time we'll say retirement age. Aranyaka portion. Which means अब physical काम नहीं होता है इतना. अब इतना भागा दौड़ी नहीं होती है. You know, when you hear your parents, when you were young and you saw your parents running here, there, and so active, and then suddenly at a certain age they start saying, "Beta get this, beta do this, beti pick up this, beti go get this." Nahi chala ja raha. Suddenly you find that the physical body is now not as agile, but the mind is still agile. The mind is still vibrant because it is still there, alive, fully functional. Because they can't do physical form of worship, and it is the stage of retirement, means the next generation has already started to take responsibility. This was the stage in the Vedic view of life, Vedic, I would say, the model of life. This was the stage, the retirement stage meant they went away from the householder's main activity and retired to forest. Aranyaka means forest, means retired to a fairly less engaging environment where your body won't be taxed a lot and you will have free time to now start doing these rituals mentally. Means engage in reflection, study. This is also the stage where you begin the process of studying about what is to come in the next stage, Atma Brahma Vidya, because all this will take 20 years. Averagely, you will see just now very soon. So Aranyaka would mean meditations. Forest stage means most part of your day would be spent in that. That stage alone would be called Upasana Kand. But Upasana Kand is merged with Karma Kand. And in Upanishad is the last stage, the fourth stage. When you are just about, ask anybody who's about to give up the body, what goes in their mind? If you can visualize for your own self, what would you be wanting to know at that time? The most important and crucial step of question that all of us have, what is death? What really is living and dying? Is there really a death of me? Is there this conscious being really dies off? There is this emergence of questions that in the busy stage of your life, earning your bread and butter and maintaining relations, you don't pay attention to because they don't seem to be necessary at that stage for your survival. But when you are about to give up your body hardly moves. You get water when somebody gives you water, otherwise you're calling, ringing bells and nobody comes. At that stage of your mind is completely vacant. You only have memories. That's about it all. But in a Vedic style, आज का जो old इंसान है is a product of modern life. But in the Vedic model of life, the old person was a very strong person. He was one which actually mentally strong. He was ready to inquire into the subtle nature of truth because he knew his body is anyway going. It's a short-term thing. And before that, he had to figure out a lot of things. So this whole process of gaining only knowledge. So Vedanta frees a person from all kinds of karma kand and upasana kand based activities. You don't have to engage in karmas, you don't have to engage in upasanas. Your mind should by now have the readiness to inquire on the truth. This is the subject of Vedanta. This is the subject of Upanishads. And these were the 4 stages that the Vedic model of life proposed to human being, and it had percolated into a societal way of. Sometimes this is just incidental because you will find it. That what I said, Upanishads, they are not just the last part. These Upanishads are also seen in all of them as one of the sections. So Samhita will have some Upanishad like a Kena Upanishad. Then you will have Brahmana will have another Upanishad. And then Aranyaka will have another, like a Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Itself, name of the Upanishad itself is that. And then you have the Upanishad stage itself, which means all Upanishads are actually Samhita, Brahmana, Aranyakas also. Topic is Upanishad. Sometimes Veda is just qualified into 2, Samhitas and Brahmanas. Samhita means, remember, poetry, suktas, which has many shakhas because everybody couldn't do everything. So in time they started having shakhas, means branches. And Brahmanas was the ritualistic portion. This Brahmana was then divided into Aranyaka and Upanishad. It doesn't really matter. What is relevant is that the Upanishads are a part of, sometimes you will find some Upanishad, this Samhita portion mein hai, कभी कहा जाएगा कि उपनिषद ब्राह्मण है, ब्राह्मण पोर्शन में है. Suddenly your mind gets overwhelmed. What is this? What is all this? So we are just covering the basic so that we know the placement where all this will come when you start hearing them. Now there is another way. Our Shastra is very vast. So we have ways of multiplying. Seeing, it's like a human body you see from the standpoint of chemicals is another definition, from the standpoint of physics is another. In the same way, Shastram, Indian Shastram, entirely is divided into three kinds. Three terms are there: Shruti, Smriti, Sutra. So you have Shruti Grantha, many of you would have heard. Then there is Smriti Grantha, there is Sutra Grantha. Shruti Grantha implies just Vedas. Whatever is said in the Veda. Shruti meant suna, means apaurushaya praman, valid, not based on a person. So knowledge that is purely apaurushaya, whose origin is the Vedas, that knowledge is called Shruti. Other than that is Paurushaya literature. We have a lot of Paurushaya literature, which is Smriti. Difference between Shruti and Smriti first is Shruti is apaurushaya and absolute praman, unquestionable, valid, superior most in its placement. Based on that is Smriti, means now there is a author to it. Smriti Grantha means it is authorized. This Smriti Grantha is further called, it has Dharma Shastram, it is Itihasa, and it is Purana. All three are called Smriti Grantha. Dharma Shastra we have heard. Manu Shastram is one of the most popular. Yagnavalkya Dharma. There are 18 Dharma Shastras to many, and many have already been destroyed. So Dharma Shastra means that Shastra which only talks about Dharma. Itihasa means as was done. It's almost like a historical thing with philosophical input. Iti means in this manner. It's hua tha. Uski story. This Itihasa is further two prominent ones that we know, Mahabharat and Ramayana. Mahabharat, again very prominent in it is the Bhagavad Gita. This, whatever is written in red, will become relevant very soon. So Bhagavad Gita is a part of Mahabharat. Mahabharat is a part of Itihas, and Itihas is a part of Smriti, and Smriti is one of our Shastrams. But it's Paurushaya. And the other Itihas is Ramayana. Then there are Puranas. Puranas are again stories basically on the same deities. Many stories. There are fundamentally 18 Mahapurans. There are many smaller Purans also. But 18 Mahapurans. They have stories around one deity or another. And because of this literature, we have so many sects that have come. Vaishnavas, Shaivas, Ganapatyas, Ayyappas, etc., etc. There are many, many sects that keep coming up because you have this division and each sect takes one particular sutta and etc. Then you have the Sutra Grantha. And Sutra Grantha means Alpaksharam, Asandiktham, Saravat, Vishwato Mukham is the four characteristics. Alpaksharam means it's in the most condensed state. Asandiktham means absolutely doubtless, which has no confusion in it. Saravat means essence. Vishwato Mukham means the topic is vast. All that information is condensed in sutra, and sutras are generally 2 words, even 1 word sutra is there. 1 word, 2 word, 3 words. Very rarely you will have a sentence as a sutra. It is very rare. And the important sutra granthas are like Brahma Sutra, and Panini Sutra has become very, very popular. These are all sutra, means they hold in it a lot of knowledge, but because they were memorized, they were alpaksharam. Within the minimum words, you could know them. Brahma Sutra is the most important. And now comes the, who was the one who did all this? Veda Vyas. His name is Krishna Dvaipayana. Today is Guru Purnima. Guru Purnima is actually Vyasa Purnima, celebrated as a birth of Vyasa. Vyasa was Krishna Dvaipayana. He got this name Ved Vyasa because Vyasa means compiler. Vedas were not four in its original state. It was one, just as science was one, and then you have branches of science. So Vyasa compiled the Veda. And once he compiled it, he got the name, the one who's compiler of the Veda, Veda Vyasa. And he is also the author of Sutra Grantha, which is the Brahma Sutras, and he is the author of Mahabharata and Puranas. So all the Puranas, major ones, Mahabharata entirely 100,000 shlokas in it, and 555 sutras and Brahma Sutras, and codifying the Vedas. All this work was done by one person, Krishna Dvaipayana, whose birthday, as if it were today, it is almost like saying mothers were always there, but we started celebrating Mother's Day. What is that meaning? It means we just chose a day in which we express our gratitude to our mother, etc. In the same way, even before Veda Vyas, teachers were always there. The knowledge was always there. But Veda Vyas became the major space in between, based on whom we started expressing the date as Guru Purnima, means we express our gratitude to the entire lineage of all the Gurus, and we took Vyasa as a symbol representing it because his work is so magnanimous that everybody's life is enriched by it, just as science is enriching all of us. Now, another thing that we all need to know is Vedas is highly democratic, unlike what people call it. People don't have a right notion sometimes, and then they misunderstand. Vedas are so democratic that each person, what is the highest state of democracy? That you have the right to refute it. Veda gives that right to everybody. So there are many people who don't accept Veda as an authority. Authority means valid. ये ज्ञान है और वो ज्ञान हर जीव के लिए हितकारी है. Many people want to reject that fact. Those who reject the Vedas are actually called Nastikas. The common understanding of a Nastika is one who doesn't believe in God. And Astika is the one who believes in God. But actually speaking in Vedic literature, Astika is one who accepts Veda as a valid means of knowledge. ज्ञान है और ये ज्ञान सही है. Nastika is the ones who do not accept Veda as Gyan. There are 6 schools of thoughts based on acceptance of Veda as knowledge, and within them they have differences. Even though we'll accept Veda, but then they have differences. And these 6 schools are Astika schools. Nyayika, Vaisheshika, Sankhya, Yoga, Purva Mimamsa and Uttara Mimamsa. Purva Mimamsa means the Karma Kand, Uttara Mimamsa means the Vedanta. And those that do not accept is Buddhism, Jainism and Charavak. And this Charavaks are actually materialists, means who only believe in matter as real. Matter as important. Like in today's world, you have matter is so important that we will kill people to enhance matter. We will kill nature, we will destroy nature, we will destroy life, but we will advance matter. That thinking is called Charavaka thinking. This Charavaka thinking grows in a person when you reject the Vedas. These are basic fundamental differences between Astika schools and the Nastika schools. Means they are schools. They are not belief in God and disbelief in God. This is very important to understand. Now, what is called the Upanishad part and where does Vedanta come in? Remember, I'm still at the objective of the first sentence I said here. Why are we having orientation? Is to see where Tattvabodha places itself. Now, this Veda, as I said, was Karmakand, Purva Bhag, sometimes contains the Upasana also is part of Karma. When they say Karam Kand alone, they mean Upasana is included. And then Jnana Kand, Uttara Bhag, which is Upanishads. And this Upanishads, there are 10 principles. Otherwise, there are many Upanishads. As we have said, unfortunately, most of our such rare knowledge has been destroyed over a period of time, burnt, destroyed. Sometimes we are careless that we didn't know how to preserve the value of it, but they are destroyed. Finally, what is available to us today, of thousands of them, there were minimum of 1008 Upanishads, means that knowledge which would give you the aikyam of who you are, the knowledge of your essential nature, that literature is rare in itself. And that literature, if it was in 1008 books, supposing, out of it only 108 odd are still there, contactable. But out of those 108 also, there are 10 principal Upanishads on whom Adi Sankara commented upon, so they become easy to understand and follow. This 10 Upanishads, finally, the entire course of Vedanta, Jnana Kand, kise kehte hain? The entire course, if you go to study somewhere 5 years, supposing a person is studying medicine, he has first year course, second year course. There are 5 years just to become a minimum MBBS doctor. If you want to know Atma Vidya, what is your course? The course is Brahma Sutras, Upanishads, Bhagavad Gita. Brahma Sutra is Sutra Grantha, Upanishad is Shruti Grantha, Bhagavad Gita is Smriti Grantha. Together these three are called Prasthana Trayi. Trayi is 3. Prasthana means you take 2. This entire thing, 10 principal Upanishads, 555 sutras and Bhagavad Gita, this is the Prasthana Trayi, Vedanta full course. Means when you have this entire disciplined thought format, you will gain the perception of who you are. Other than that is the 4th one called Prakarna Grantha. Prakarna Grantha basically means introductory texts. There are many, many technical terms that get used in this. In the first time, if you know, now because of people going to gym and all that, many people know what are quadriceps and biceps. But when people were not going to such places, or it was 20 years, 30 years down the line, it was not a very popular thing, going to gyms. And if you say your quadriceps is hurt, you have strained your quadriceps. So people, what are you talking? Now, quadriceps is a technical term which is involved in a context. In the same way, all this study involves very technical terms. There are explanations, and explanations have words, and those words have meanings. And many times, these being very crystallized, by the time our busy minds don't have so much to understand, time to let the teacher explain and us understand. Prakarna Granthas is thankful. It's an authorship. These are all Paurushaya Granthas. Some great teacher in the lineage has introduced certain topics which are going to be used in all these 3, or certain methodology, and he expands on it. It's an individual work. But it helps tremendously to understand these, which is the main Vedanta. Tattva Bodha is one of those introductory texts, which means it is going to be defining to us some things which are very essential in the study of the Vedanta. What does it define? The contents and the topics of Tattva Bodha is going to be that you will study now as we move on in classes. The first thing will be eligibility. Who's eligible for Atma Vidya? What is truth? What are the 3 bodies that you have? You only think you have the physical body, and you have a mind maximum, we think. But you have 3 bodies. What are the 3 bodies? What are the 3 states? Like you have, what are the 3 states of water? So you say, oh, water, ice, and steam. What are the 3 states in which you inhabit? You inhabit 3 states. What are those 3 states? You will get to know them. The 5 sheets. What are the 5 layerings that you have? What is Atman? What are you? Atman. Who's Atman? What is Atman? And then you get to know who are you. What is creation? How has creation come about? It's a hypothesis. How did the creation come? What is Ishvara and what are Devtas? What is Jiva means the individual? Relation between Jiva and Ishvara. What is the relation? Is there a relation? These questions get answered here. Then the highest knowledge, Tattvamasi, the great aphorism, that you are that ultimate truth, the highest truth. That Tattvamasi gets expanded, explained here. Then Jivana Mukta, a very rare thing you will not have another literature. It's forget rare. There is no other literature which talks of Jivan Mukti, which means you are liberated while you are alive. Explaining that. And then coming back to what is karma. And I know one person in the form has filled, wants to know more about karma. What is karma? And then what is freedom from bondage, which is called mukti. Now these are the basic topics that we are going to be covering as the classes move on. And just very few last points that I said, the second objective of this orientation is, we are intending to do it 2 hours a week, which is on weekends, till the text completes. It's a small text, not a very big text, but all these topics will be there, and these topics are subtle. These topics sometimes can get into explanations over classes. So it won't be one class, one topic. Sometimes there can be more classes for each topic. One thing that will really help in absorbing the knowledge is, try to keep the discipline of your class attendance non-flexible. There are many reasons in our life to, especially when there'll be recordings, many of us get into slip slowly saying recording sun lenge. But you will realize that it is never the same. Because firstly and foremostly, Brahma Vidya, this is called Brahma Vidya, is not a transaction online. It's not possible. What you will really gain here is that you will get information, but the very information also gets diluted if you don't sit through the class. So if you just hear a recording, half the mind will be somewhere. Like I said, invocation nahi hota hai. You don't keep a 1 hour for yourself entirely. It's not possible. Even online, we will find there'll be some distractions. But if you start by saying non-flexible, then you will see that it is very soon possible to be non-flexible. We have conducted for so many years classes without a break, and people have really been disciplined, because as you grow into it, you realize everything else is worthless, this alone is worthwhile. But that happens with perception, and everybody gets it or not is individual. Third thing, there is a beautiful reminder. The higher the goal you see for yourself in this subject, greater will be your extract from the classes. You see, everybody will not take the same thing. But what you will take from the class will be what you have set your goal on. What do you want? So if you're clear on that, you will realize that you will extract the knowledge better from there. Now, in this knowledge itself, there is actually 3 approaches, which is something that you need to be very careful about. How you approach this knowledge. What do you want from this knowledge? There is just an intellectual approach, a curiosity. I just want to know, that's it. There's nothing more than that. I'm living my life, I'm fine the way I am. This world is all that is real, but I still have an interest, I want to know, which is fair, which is not recognized. It's recognized, but you will only gain that much then, is what my point is. Then there is an emotional approach. By emotional, I don't mean emotions, I mean a mental modification follows the intellectual approach. Means as much as you start to understand, absorb, you find that your mind begins to transform. So that's what I'm calling as an emotional approach. There's an emotional maturity that happens along with intellectual understanding. And the highest is the spiritual approach, which means get to the fundamental that the subject wants to talk. What does it want to talk? It wants to talk about Atma Brahma Aikyam. Do I know it? I don't know it. Is it going to be easy? Not going to be easy. Is it possible? Scripture says it's possible. Vedanta says it's possible. How much time it will take? Nobody can say. How many janmas it will take? Nobody can say, etc. But am I still ready to pursue it? If you have the highest goal, you will realize the other 2 will follow. That means if you have an emotional approach, your intellectual curiosity will satisfy on its own. You don't have to work on it. If you have a spiritual approach, your intellectual and emotional growth will happen. And this is how you define your own self, which nobody from outside will do for you. So we will try and keep these classes as regular. God forbid, of course, there are external factors which will be there for everyone. The recordings will be there. At the moment, I may not share them because the Facebook will be there. You can check over there. Otherwise, we'll find that out. So with this, I'll end the class first and I'll stop the recording. And then if you have any questions, we'll take up the questions there. So let me just end with an invocation and I'll stop. Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamivavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Everyone.